I'm Lori Richardson, and I'm author of the new book, She Sells. I'm founder of Score More Sales and also of Women's Sales Pros. And the best advice I've ever gotten in sales is to be a student of sales, communication, and all the things that are involved in being successful. Be a lifelong learner.
That is awesome advice. Be a lifelong learner. So, when did you learn that in your career, Lori?
Oh, I would say in my early 20s. In fact, I chose someone to be my mentor that they didn't know. It was Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins made a big splash in the 80s. And I learned so much from him. And I really loved what he used to say about how success leaves clues. So if you want to be successful in any area, you find someone who has those skills or has that success, and you model it. And that's one of the best things I think that I learned as well.
That's awesome. Tony Robbins. Wow, that's quite a person to learn from. That was back when he wrote what Awaken the Giant Within, and
Yeah,
he was on every infomercial, right?
infomercials, yeah. And I think he was known as Anthony Robbins
Yes,
back
he
then.
was. Yep. Yep. Somebody probably bought the domain name, so that's probably why he changed his name, right?
Probably.
That's fun. That is fun. Well, you've been selling a long time, and we've chased each other around the internet for years. So it's fun to finally spend a little time with you. But I gotta ask, like, tell me about that early sales job, that first sales job. What was that like?
Yeah, I was a preschool teacher, and but I had grown up in a family-run business, so I knew about sales through my grandmother, and I became a teacher. I really wanted to be a teacher. That was my lifelong goal, and growing up, and so I became a single parent after that, and I realized I couldn't afford the supporting my family with that career. And so I thought, maybe I could get into technology, because technology was just really coming about in the 80s. There were some really cool things happening with personal computers, is what we called them back then, getting rid of mainframes and mini computers, those giant computers that were taking up space in companies. And I was in Seattle growing up, and that's where Bill Gates said, we want to put a computer on everybody's desk. And I thought, that's pretty cool. And so I thought maybe I could sell technology. And I just applied to every company that was reselling computers. And eventually a company called the Byte Shop, BYTE, Byte Shops Northwest, hired me. And the guy that interviewed me kept saying, "But do you really like to sell?" that was one of his questions. I said, "Yeah, I think so. Yeah, pretty sure." And we just had a great time. It was a great first role, and I sold lots of computers and peripherals and training and all sorts of things. And then I went to my another company where a lot of my peers had gone on to, which was a better company, and they had never hired a woman in field sales. So I had to jump through 10 or 20 hoops to get a shot to be able to go there. And then I was fortunate that I closed a multi-million dollar deal in the first 90 days on my own. So it was the previous rep that I inherited his territory, and the company that was looking for this business, they couldn't stand this guy, so they wouldn't give our company a chance. So when I came in, I heard about it, and I approached them, and I said, "That guy's gone," and we worked together and got the deal. So that was, yeah, so that was good.
Wow. So starting out in tech sales, that's like 35, 40 years ago. That's unheard of to that point. I mean, even still, I hate to say it, right? We still have this problem where there aren't a lot of women in sales in general, but especially in tech sales. So,
Right.
is it any better now? Is there any hope that we're a little better? Where are we, like, on the continuum?
Yeah, it's very different. So there are some great companies, and there are some great leaders who embrace having, a sales team that is inclusive of everybody. And so from that standpoint, it's really awesome. And there are companies like, Salesforce.com was one of the first companies to where the leader, Mark Benioff, said, we want to make sure women are paid the same as men. And they went through and adjusted everything and spent, millions and millions of dollars to do that. And so in that sense, it's way better. But we have lost women, Phil. We've lost some women in the last couple of years because of the pandemic, and then recent downsizing in tech, a lot of layoffs. The last in, first out, it was women and probably people of color as well. So from what I've seen in terms of statistics, the more recent folks that have come in to help build inclusive teams are gone. So we got to do it again. So, we're back to the drawing board. But this economy is growing. I'm not worried about it like maybe the last time we had a downsizing. And so from that standpoint, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Good, good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. So with that, right, that leads me to, you wrote this book, which is fantastic, by the way. I love this book. She sells, attract, promote, and retain great women in B2B sales. It's super instructive. I love how every piece of it you have a 10-point checklist. It makes
Yeah,
it really easy, right, for folks who suffer from short attention spans. I read books, so I mean, there are some weeks I'll read 3 or 4 books.
good for
Because
you.
I make it a point to read every guest book if they come on my show. It's super important to me. It's a sign of respect.
I do that
For them.
too. Good for
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So, but I share that as because I think we have to start in the beginning here about the foundation, right? The foundation for change. That's where you start your book. I mean, you talk about why now as well, but I mean, the foundation is really, really important because if we don't get this right, I don't think the rest of it matters as much, right? Because it's just then we're just putting patchwork in. So, talk to me about the foundation for how
Yeah.
we get this started.
Yeah, I mean, there's a dollars and cents reason, which is, people that are coming into the business roles now want to be around diversity and inclusiveness. And so you can actually lose business if your team is not diverse. So, I mean, that's one thing, but also, there are a lot of stats that show how strong women are in selling. And so that's, another reason. And I say, I'm not going to go around saying women are better than men in sales, but I'm going to say, what if we're the same? We're the same. How come half of the sales teams and sales leadership isn't female? It just doesn't make sense to me. And it's because, it's been kind of a boys club for a long time, and it was working. And so it kept working, and women have been kind of let in gradually, and people here and there get to join in, but now it's a very viable business for women to consider who are coming up at graduating from school. There are over 230 sales programs around the country where you can get a degree from a college or university in sales. There's even a PhD in sales, actually, and
Hmm.
a number of master's programs. So it's a real profession. You don't need a sales degree. That's the other thing, is that you don't need a degree to do well in sales, and you can thrive without having as much of an academic background than maybe in some other roles.
Yeah. I, a couple things there I just want to unpack. You talked about inclusion more than diversity, and
Yeah,
I read that through the book, and I thought that was such an important distinction. So I'd like to start there and unpack that a little bit. What's
yeah.
the difference between diversity and inclusion, and why is inclusion so important?
Yeah, I mean, diversity is, when someone says you need to interview some women, you have to have women in your interview. So you say, hey, I interviewed a woman. I had one woman in an interview. I mean, that's just not enough. It
Woohoo!
yeah, it's just, it's like meeting the minimum. And inclusion is being part of the team. It's not just being hired. I've seen women come into a very large company, name that you would know, and the sales managers were told, you have to hire this woman. And, they were just, it was just done so poorly about how things were handled. And women that would leave because they didn't feel like they were part of the team. They didn't feel like their voice was heard, or that, anyone really cared about their thoughts, or they took their idea and made it their own. And, this has gone on for years for women in business. But in sales, we just, a lot of us, particularly in tech, we know that there's this bro culture that persists in some organizations, not all, but in some. And a lot of women just don't want to be around it. They don't want to talk sports every day. I love sports myself. I love hockey. I'm a big hockey fan. And even I might say too much, use too many sports analogies, so it's not like every woman is the same. It's like every man is not the same, but it tends to be that we don't want to be in this male atmosphere, is high testosterone, let's kill them, war words kind of a thing. We have our own approach to how we want to sell.
Yeah, so I read that. I actually took a note of that about the language that we use, even in our job descriptions and our job postings, so different. And a word that I've heard this, but never anywhere I've worked. The whole sales savage.
Yeah.
Like I'm like,
There's a
what? Who
company
uses
today.
that?
There's a company today that is, they have a community, and they send out emails and they say, "Hey, sales savages." And I have them in my inbox right now.
Oh my gosh!
And,
I mean,
and I
that's
know the CEO, I know the founder. And it's just like,
oh
please,
my goodness.
yeah,
Right? That's terrible. I mean, that's the opposite of inclusive, right? That's so exclusive. You have to be part of the yeah, yuck. I mean, and I'm yeah, wow.
I
So
saw it once, I saw it again. I was like, oh my goodness, like they think that this is cool. Like this is a good way to address people. Unbelievable.
that's yeah, wow, 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 wow. So that's so interesting. I think it's so fascinating to me about the whole inclusive thing because it is so important to feel a part of something bigger than yourself.
Right.
Whether that's a team or a company or a mission or whatever that is. So how you talk about though how it starts at the top. Uh, what happens though, Lori, when we have great top line leadership and then we have like a middle management tier that frankly doesn't get it? I mean, can we bust through and how do we fix that?
Yeah, that's a common thing. And in sales, Phil, typically people go into sales management that were strong salespeople. So those skills are totally different. Being a really good manager is totally different from being a successful salesperson. So the managers need to learn. They need to learn how to relate to different people with different backgrounds, different genders, and people of color, and different all sorts of learning styles and learning issues. And we just need to be more open to the fact that I mean, I think of, it's not so much today, but it used to be people had to make 100 cold calls, and then social media came about, and companies managers are still say, nope, you got to make those calls, but I can get more meetings if I do it a different way. No, got to do it this way. And so being open to what works for different sellers. I mean, it's very much like having a team of people and allowing their gifts to shine through. We all bring different things to the table. That's another reason why having an inclusive team is, you have someone that's more creative over here, and then you have someone that's more regimented and process oriented over here. And combined makes for a really amazing group.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and it helps fill in the gaps because we're not good at everything. I think that's the other thing that we need to remember is we have gifts, but we don't have every gift. We
Right.
have some, right? And we have to sprinkle in others. Otherwise, we're going to have blind spots and we're going to miss stuff.
Yeah, and a very homogeneous team where everybody's nodding yes. That's the way we used to hire. People would say, hire someone that you'd want to be in your canoe. If you're on a lake, you want someone that's like you. And we don't need that. We need people that are different, that can solve a problem differently than you can, or that I can. And that if we do that, we're going to have better teams and they're going to be more successful, higher revenue.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, it's funny you say that, get them in your canoe. I used to always say someone that I'd want to go camping with, not because I want them like me, but because I want to see, are they resourceful? Are they going to take care of me? Are they going to take care of themselves? How are they going to prepare? So I had a lot more than just do I like them. I wanted to see their skill set and see how they would do. Not to mention, I wanted to make sure that they didn't get flustered because I was an IT VP.
Right.
So asking that question, like, so okay, so imagine we're going camping several months after, so you already know me a little bit. It's going to be safe. I'm not taking you out to kill you, right? But I'm going to take you out so we can get to know each other a little bit more. So
Yeah.
talk to me about the trip. And so I will tell you, I got some super interesting answers about that, but
Yeah.
that's because I was looking for the diversity of thought, and I was
Yeah.
looking
You were
for.
open. You were
That's
open.
right.
The difference
Yep.
is not looking for the same.
That's right.
The
That's right.
culture fit. We used to call it culture fit.
Yeah. Well, we still call it that, right? We still call it that. And it's like, what does that mean? I mean, I do understand. I mean, I'm with Bamboo HR right now, and our culture is super strong, but our culture isn't because of who it is, it's because of what we believe. Right. And
Right.
I think that's the other thing is, again, if we elevate that, we can do that. And that brings me to the next point that I want to talk to you about, and that is the whole, how do we attract women to this? And you said languaging absolutely matters, but there's more than just savages on these job postings that scare women off, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. I ran into a company called Textio probably in maybe 2015 or 2016. And there are other companies like them out there, but they would look at language and they would look at words and they went through all sorts of different hiring documents and job descriptions. And they found that there were words that appealed more to men and there were words that appealed more to women. And they're not obvious words, they're words that are not so obvious. Like we would know aggressive, you would think that that's definitely more of a male term, but you can actually go through, you can run a job description through some of these different programs. They're just one company, and you can find out. And also, if you use too many bullet points, that's another thing, because there's the old story about how if a woman doesn't meet 100% of the job requirements, she's not going to apply. And if a man would do it at probably 60%, and they'd be lucky to have them, right? But with women, I don't think it's because of a lack of confidence, but I think it's more of, I don't want to waste your time. If you need all these things and I only meet these, I'm not going to apply. So the trick is that you note that on, if you post on LinkedIn or wherever, you say, if you don't meet every single requirement, please apply anyway. Or there are ways you can say things, or you have less bullet points. Just put what's really, really required for that role and be open to other things. And then just share that we're looking for a diverse group of folks, please apply, and encourage people. And that's what it takes to get more people to go, yeah, maybe I will. It sounds like Phil is more open to it than just giving me these 50 things that are required.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, culture wise, just saying that you're trying to do something leaves a little bit of a clue that says, okay, maybe there really is an opening here. And it seems so simple, but yet often not done. I mean, I know there hasn't, I haven't seen a lot of job postings with that. And
No,
yet it's not that hard. Like just tell
right.
people, if you think that you match, and you'd like to work with us, please apply, right? We'd like to see you here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's not hard to do. And I believe in using an assessment tool for sales roles just because I've been exposed to it and I've done a lot of research on it. So I think that can help too if you're a company that looks at core sales competencies. That's a good way to go as well.
Which assessments, Lori, do you like?
Well, I use one that we roll up into our services, so we just call it our scorecard.
Okay,
It's on the scoremoresales.com website.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I'll make sure that I put that up at the bottom of
Oh,
the
thank
video
you.
here with that. Yeah, of course, absolutely. Super important that folks, can find you more. So I've got a couple things to put up there. So okay, so we hopefully we attracted the right candidates, some
Yeah.
more women there. That's important, right? And we're including them. But one of the chapters that I want to go into, because I'm doing a lot of this now, is onboarding. You talk about
Yeah.
onboarding, women. I really thought this was important, right? And your sixth point on your top 10 was about ensuring that you have a solid formal program for new hires that
Yeah.
folks out who your buyers are and how you serve them. And then getting outside opinions from sales experts or educators. I think that is super, super important. I know we have persona training for our reps, and we have a solid. It was 6 weeks now. It's 4 weeks because we're mostly promoting from within
Hmm.
about that. So talk to me about that and why that's such an important thing as far as having a solid formal program.
Yeah, having the formal program helps with anything that's just kind of subliminal when we think, oh, he's a guy, he'll know that, or she's a woman, we do these things subliminally, we don't do it on purpose. And so having a formal checklist and approach and process that, we go through this and we do this and we do this. I did some research with an educator named Dr. Joel Laban. He's at Johns Hopkins University, and we found that women have some different traits that they bring to the table. Not surprisingly, I guess, and men have different from women, and so we want to make sure that we address that, so that people feel comfortable and welcome and they're getting the information they need. And if you're onboarding them, to get feedback from them, and you need a part of your process where you're checking on feedback. And then also something that we found that women are more interested in, generally speaking, than men, is professional development. So what do I get next? What's my path? What happens in a year down the road if I do really well? What's next? And we're planners, generally speaking, at more than men, generally speaking. So again, I'm not trying to make a blatant statement, but we want to know, if I do really well here, where do I go? And that's important. So have a professional development plan in place and be able to explain it to people as part of that onboarding process.
Yeah, I mean, I, I think that's super important because to your point about planning, I, I would imagine you want to stay in one spot for a long time. I think everybody does. You want to be stable. You want to make sure there's some upward mobility or at least some side to side mobility. So make sure that that's laid out. I think that's great. And with that, you also kind of, I guess, dovetail in there the formal coaching program for once a week. So talk to me about that because I think one thing that many managers struggle with is the difference between feedback and coaching.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, people think, and I've been around a lot of sales teams over the years, and some leaders think, well, Phil's really experienced, so I just hire him in. I don't need to coach him. But that's not true, because we all need coaching. And I'll go to my sports analogy for a minute and say, the best athletes in the world have coaches, and there's a reason for that, because we can get stagnant, we can lose track of, where we're at, we can get complacent, or we just don't learn new things normally. So having a manager that is going to help coach it is such an important thing. And the managers need to be coached too. That's what people don't realize, is who's coaching the manager. Well, it's not true that you just hire someone and throw them in that role and, good luck, here you go, here's your computer. It just doesn't work that way. We need to spend time coaching, and it's one of the most important things that needs to be done.
Yeah, I so agree with that. It's so important, and yet, yeah, so often not done. So really, really great stuff there. So, um, there's so much that we could cover from your book. Lori. It is really, really spectacular. So I'm going to assume we're going to move forward here. I'm going to assume that folks are hiring women. They've got a career plan in place. They're including them in. So let's talk about the promotion path because you talk about this, right? And you say, a couple things that I really like, right? Realize women look at your website before engaging. So sell your beliefs and vision there. And I would add, don't just have stock photos of women, actually have employees that are there,
Yeah,
right?
there's an
I mean,
idea.
that's, I think, right? The crazy idea.
Yeah.
And with that, one of the things that you mentioned in your top 10 tips here is identifying those non-typical high potential reps and tell them you know them and you believe that they have potential. So talk to me about that because I don't think that's done nearly enough or well enough anyway.
Yeah, it's really important in giving feedback and all the way around. You're strong in this area, and also here's an area that I think could be stronger. What do you think? And get some feedback that way, and coach people that way. And yeah, as you were talking about people looking on the website, if you have four male founders and everybody on your board is male or mostly male, maybe you don't want to show that. Or promote some people and to be able to look at this goes back to this same process. Have a plan in place for how someone gets promoted so that you can tell me, Phil, if I do these things, it's not a matter of, hey, Phil, I've been here for a year, when am I getting my promotion? But it's more, some companies have done this really well where they set some milestones. When you accomplish this and you've closed this much business or you've done these types of deals, then you can progress to a level 2 in your role or something. And maybe there's more pay involved, maybe not, maybe just getting to that level 2, level 3, and then we consider you for the account executive role. So it doesn't just happen because you've been there a year. And this is where we've gotten into a problem, is that we've had men who will say, hey, Phil, I'm over here. Like, I've been here 6 months. I wanted to have your job, and they're going to be more assertive about wanting to do that. Whereas some of the women, we tend to put our head down. We're working really hard and we're waiting for you to tap us on the shoulder. But if you say, here's how we promote people at our company, we have these different levels. And when you achieve these different pieces, you'll be considered for promotion. It's very fair that way. And we're looking for fairness, equity, as we've talked about with International Women's Day, right? Is we want equity. And so what's fair? It's tricky in sales as people say, yeah, but Phil had more experience. Phil did this differently. And so it's always real hard to put your hand on, well, what do I exactly need to do? Because you just don't see me in the C-suite. You don't see me calling on C-level executives because I don't have that, the right style. And that's what's held women back. So we need to say, do these things, Lori, and you'll be considered, for promotion. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Clarity.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I would say, doesn't everybody want that? Like, isn't clarity a good thing? Like, if we do that, and the accidental byproduct is we promote more women, well, yay, right? I mean, isn't that great? I mean, come
Yeah.
on, I want clarity. I know I do, right? So that's so interesting. So,
I mean,
um,
one example is like when you talk about executive presence, like that was a term that people would say, yeah, I just don't think she has executive presence. But it's like, but what does that mean? Tell me what I'm missing and I'll do that because I want to be promoted. And that's held women back from promotion for, many a year.
yeah, yeah. Well, vagaries don't help anybody.
Right.
Specificity wins.
Yeah, and the antidote, if you're a woman that wants to be promoted, is that you document what you've succeeded at, document what you've accomplished, and then when that comes up, you say to someone, "What do you mean by that? Give me a look. Can you give me an example of how I'm not, I'm not worthy, or how I don't show executive presence?" And then, you'll at least hear what they're thinking in their mind, because I don't wear a suit, because I don't do, what is it? And then ultimately you can show with sales, we can show our successes. That's why I love this niche. I love sales, because you either do it or you don't. It's a 0 or a 1. And if I'm not closing business, I don't have much ground to talk. When I am closing business, I could say, hey, Phil, look at the numbers, right? Scoreboard, right?
Yeah, can't argue with the newspaper, right?
Yeah, right. Can't argue with the
Yeah.
facts.
That's right. That's right. Well, cool. Well, as we wrap up here, Lori, what I love that you close with creating a great sales culture. I think that's super, super important. I mean, you could put that at the beginning, you could put that at the end. I like that you put it at the end because you set it up, I mean, so well in the book. Like I said, I love the book. So talk to me about what is a great sales culture, and then give me like maybe the first two steps if I'm going to create one.
Yeah, well, we're in an environment now where people don't have to go into the office. There's been a huge change where the employees can basically be like, you know what, Phil, I'm not going to come into the office anymore. I moved away. I'm not near the city anymore. If you want me, it's a whole different mindset than it used to. It's a power shift too. And then people are let go, right? Riffs, as we call them. And now I'm not so trusting of leadership. And so if you don't create a good culture, I mean, it's a game. It's a need to have. If your company doesn't think about that, they're really missing the boat, and they're going to lose good people, because if you're good in sales, you can go just about anywhere you want. And so what are you doing as a company, as an organization, to make me feel good, make me feel special, make me feel wanted? It's really upon you running the company. For the leaders that are listening in, it's upon you. It's not upon me to go, well, yeah, they're treating me pretty well. You need to remind me about, here's what we're doing, here's what we're planning, so that I will want to stay there.
Yeah. The reminders are so important without being, in people's faces, but just reminding them, hey, here's what we're doing. And I love that you mentioned kind of that future plans because that's important. We can't fix everything today. We can't fix everything, maybe even tomorrow, but in time we can. And I think that's great. And I think that's a great message from your book, right? But that we're making steps. We need to make more. We have some action steps here. Every piece of the book is actionable, which is unlike many books that I've
Yeah.
read, right? I read a lot of sales books, Lori. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
Yeah,
Great,
this
great
isn't
job.
theory. These are the answers to the questions I've gotten over the years from real people. And
Yep.
thank you for that. It's really, the first step is really also asking people, what do you think about what we're doing right? And building on that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that as a first step, right? Ask people what we're doing right and then
Yeah.
doing more of that instead of,
Yeah.
oh, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is
We're
wrong.
just
I think
assuming
that's,
like, oh, we're pretty good. I was invited as one of the male allies to be on a panel. I have a colleague that did that. He was on a panel, and then he went to the women on his team and he said, how did I do? What could we do better? And he got more feedback. He wasn't just like, yeah, we're all that. So
yeah,
keep
be
people going.
open, right? Be open
Yeah.
to that feedback. Awesome. Awesome. Well, a couple things for folks if you're listening, you're watching, right? First, I encourage you to go to womensalespros.com. Lots of great resources there for women in sales. And then, of course, get to know Lori more at scoremoresales.com. Lots of great stuff there. Her book is She Sells, Attract, Promote, and Retain Great Women in Sales. Lori, you are a gem, my friend. I'm so glad we got to share this. I'm so glad you wrote this book because it is so needed. And I hope you sell millions of copies because everybody needs a copy of this book.
Thank you, Phil. I really appreciate that so much, and I appreciate that you read it, and you get it. You get it.
Absolutely. I do my absolute best. I know I can do better too. Now that I know better, I can do even better, though, which is important, which is why the book is so valuable.